Welcome to Redhead Rewriting Reality by Kimberly Sue Iverson, the story of my life as I figure out who I am after a lifetime of abuse and share my journey with that. Sharing my journey of building my author career, the struggles, bettering self, and creating a new life. I'm a multi-genre author who's published more than 53 stories and coming to you from the Pacific Northwest. And this podcast is for you because, like me, you love stories, journeys, and you just want to relax for a bit. So let me take care of you. This audio is intended for an adult audience. Themes and topics may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Now, get yourself comfy and make yourself at home, and let's dive in. Tarzan of the Apes, Chapter 2, and Self-Correcting Behavior. Honestly, I like saying welcome to the madhouse. This is apparently gonna be a thing for me. Sort of like when I came up with beware the hellhounds who lurk in the shadows, for they are so hungry and you are so tasty. I'm not even sure where my mind was at when I came up with that, but it works for so many aspects of my life and work. It could mean horror, it could mean my dogs, it could encompass not giving attitude because male friends watch over me. So many reasons that could fit, which is something I love about words and double entendres. Hoozles, I have realized since editing the last chapter that I need a good old-fashioned spanking on how I am reading. I was slipping into my normal energy and voice a bit too much, and I've seen a bad habit of doing so in general. I still posted it as I usually will since the audio is good, but with the note now of pointing out, I have since noticed I am doing that and want to correct it. I know you may or may not notice it or realize why that is bothersome to me, but I self-correct on that because I want this to be a relaxing podcast. My focus on many things I do these days is comfort, peace, relaxation, pleasure, focus. Though that one has usually been a focus, I do nothing if I can't glean some sort of pleasure from it, because I would be miserable. So even when I don't fully want to engage with whatever it may be, I ask myself if I can find some joy and pleasure in it. That's pleasure for me. Happiness, joy, comfort, love, passion, all the good, snuggly, warm vibes. Why? Because we all deal with too much, and I don't want to add to it. I want to be an escape from it. If you're new or haven't heard all the podcasts before this, what I wanted originally for this was just to post an audio version of my blog for people to listen to. Hence I do these posts on the blog still, and hence they end up usually a transcript. Part of it is because it keeps my mind and mouth on track. Another is because it gives me the ability to maintain the comfort and soft tone of my voice. My natural state to my energy and my voice is a very bubbly, happy-go-lucky, giggly, vibrant aspect. Loud at times from growing up around so many always saying speak up when one of my natural sides is a soft, quiet speech. Unassuming, not wanting attention on me, only wanting that singular person I'm speaking to hear me, not the entire world. So I can boost volume at times because inside I'll be saying it to self, or it'll be my brother, but I think he's starting to get used to softer noises so I don't have to shout for him to hear me, when before it wasn't that way. So being able to monitor and regulate my volume when I have no baseline for it is a thing I do often for these reads. I started off with the fact that I know people enjoy my voice, even if I don't, and I've heard so many times that I have a soothing and comforting tone. I want to maintain that sort of environment for people who need something to relax to at the end of the day, or when they want to half focus on exercise and half focus on a podcast, or whatever their reason. An EMT had said to me my voice would be great for ASMR too, and he uses it after work to decompress from the job, which is totally understandable. We all can benefit from a shift from chaotic to calming. I have grown up around friends and known many who had children with autism or with Downs, and those sorts of things are also in the back of my mind. Granted, I cuss whenever I feel like it, and address topics parents may not want their children to listen to, but I also was a child that was early exposed to violence, cussing, sexual things, and more, so I don't police what another does with their child. Still, I try to be cognizant of that and not let things get too out of hand for it. There's always such a balance for me. The bottom line, though, is that I want to provide comfort. I want to be a safe place where people tune in like Mr. Rogers, and there's a community. The Cheers bar has forever been a focus too. Community, being able to fight and argue and come back the next day. Provided, it's civil and respectful sorts of debates. When I speed into my more natural energy, like I noticed last week that you may not, I'm going, seriously? Calm your bum down, girl. In time, I'm sure it'll be more notable for people as they learn my rhythms. But I want my main focus on this to be soothing, calming, comfort, no matter what I discuss or otherwise. Even if I'm discussing what I've been through, it's why I'll try to temper exclamations in reading or not allow too much excitement and try to be a consistent tone without hitting that monotone. I don't want to bore you to sleep. I want to comfort you to sleep. I know plenty do like the monotone voices though. I certainly do, and they don't bore me. I don't worry too much over a certain type, hoping I'll utterly alter myself for their benefit. There's plenty out there for you if I'm not it. Our first fan, reader, follower, otherwise, will always have to be us. That's the person we're often targeting. Similar to us. Since I am easygoing, accepting, overlook errors and flaws when I know the person is doing the best they can, that's who you are. And you don't need me to handhold as I can slip into from insecurities. That I have to self-correct too. as much as that space of being extra critical of self. I'm aware this fits that, shush. Earlier, I was reading a book a neighbor gave me when she brought me a moving in gift, which is Gifts and Gratitudes by Anne Voskamp, Voskamp. I don't know if I'm saying that right, so hopefully I am. The book isn't as important, though it's a good one, as is the tone of writing and the tone of voice used. It's more of a poetic, and as fiction writers are told not to do, flowery language and prose. One could call it a more romantic tone, a more, as one guy said to me, unicorns in Fantasyland tone, when he'd assumed I never had issues and wanted to bury my head in the sand. Instead of, perhaps, me trying to be positive, look at the bright side of things and not dwell or focus purely on the negative. That's the one critical voice in a sea of positive that can affect us, which is some of those criticisms that I think got to me a lot, and I want to start to try to shift. I have been used to being criticized and attacked 24/7, 365, so the defensive armor can be hard to set down. Hard to see that not everyone is attempting to attack and be mean when that's all you're used to. I mean, we see plenty online still doing so, and I worry it will only pick up. They go out of their way to shut you down, knock you off a pedestal, snark, and use sarcasm, which is another form of attacks. The ones who purposely use laughing emojis and simply use childish language and immature attacks. I also want to try to shift that again too. It's always going to be there. What we can do, if you want to join in with me, is limit what we see, who we see online, especially what we watch, what we listen to, what we take in and absorb. I have been pretty discerning about that, but I think I could do way better. I know I can, and I'm going to start to do so. Doing small jabs at people can be entertaining and funny, but excessive joking is actually just another defensive weapon. It's another wall we're throwing up between us and another person or the world. It's us saying, you know what? I don't need to know you. I don't want to. You're not worth it. And what happens? What we see currently. People are mean and underhanded and snarky and snipey just because they are not being seen, and they seek attention. They want to be seen. Personally, I don't mind if someone else wants to create that world around themselves and be like that, but I don't. I never have. It's why I don't like negativity. My body cannot handle it. I remember when I was a nanny and the mom came home and got really pissed off at someone while she was in her office on the phone. I started to feel sick, anxious, and that lovely PTSD was activating. I got up to move around and get water to purposely rid my body of that energy building up. I couldn't leave since she was busy and had asked me, I think, to stay just a little bit longer after she got home, which I was always cool with since I adored him and little boys. Also, I think it was good for him to have someone with him. We were both reading. He liked to scooch himself so his back was against my side while we read on the couch, or right up against me. I always thought it was so precious. Kona does that sort of thing now a lot. He did it more before, but I've mentioned we are still still working on getting back to that space. It hit me last week or so that I never considered what it did to him to watch Mila leave, and I walked her out. Then she was gone forever. That was like his baby. I didn't think they'd take her, and I didn't know that was it. So I didn't think to have him love on her to say goodbye. Then he'd lost his mom, dad, brother on top of it, his grandma, my mom a year prior, and then we moved. It took its toll, so it's no wonder that something in him finally snapped, like it did me when we lost Mila. He quit wanting to be near me or anyone really, but his sister for a long time. Now he's at least snuggling me at night again, and like this morning, he was rooting my back and scratching near it, then snuggling into me. We are slowly getting back to the constant touch and love space we were in. It's slow, but there's progress. I'll show a picture on my blog if you're listening to this that I took yesterday while I worked. He snuggles my foot when I work often lately. But that's another thing I do want to self-correct and focus on. We don't like being around someone constantly criticizing and critical and snarky and mean. I'm not that bad about it like my mom was, so you basically felt you didn't just walk on eggshells, but razors. You couldn't fully relax. You couldn't let your guard down. You couldn't be happy, because whether it was at you, the TV, the phone, or another space, she was always barking at people, things, the dogs, always critical. Like a sponge, we also absorb that energy being around it. I've admitted I don't have a baseline of healthy adult or human behavior, so I am purposely, constantly learning, shifting, having eye-opening moments. It's why you could hear me say something and think, but that's normal. And I'm thinking I'm a psychopathic abuser for it. I don't want to be like her. I've never wanted to. But being around that energy, even online or in books I read, it can absorb too easy. I'm a sponge. I absorb what's around me. I've never said empath, and now especially since too many bad actors have completely misrepresented what that is. It's not a loss of boundaries and a person shoving themselves on another. You're not an empath when you cry your butt off for the world being bad off. You lack boundaries and self-regulation. I'm not going to scream and cry over injustices, but I am constantly absorbing the energy around me so I can get physically, mentally, and emotionally sick being around negativity. My boundaries can be rock hard for certain things for self because of it. Like I don't follow politics very closely because people lying and manipulating that way can irritate the F out of me. And what happens? I turn around and become that way to another. I pour that negative energy I've absorbed out onto the first person who triggers me, who didn't mean to. And if you've never seen the rage I'm capable of, be glad. Blackout rage is a thing. It's why I focus on peace and self-regulation learning. So I self-regulate. I know how that affects me. I know what that does to me. I keep track of it to a point. That will never change. The people change. The faces changed. But the heart of that is and always will be the exact same as it has always been. It's a good TV show that goes on reruns. That's it. I know people don't agree. I have been called names by people for it. Good. They can think I bury my head in the sand or whatever other critical thought they have, but I am the one likely to get so negative and sick from negativity that I start to self-attack and walk off a bridge after I've destroyed all the people around me with the verbal lashing I am capable of from growing up around a narcissist. They are not. They have gazillions of others they can focus on to target. I am not their audience. It's the same as why I don't follow some friends on socials too. I will follow and then mute their posts. If someone is always attacking the other side, no matter what side they're on, what it relates to, and putting people down, they are not doing anyone any good. They are engaging in the us versus them battle that the ones in power thrive off of. As long as there is division and attacking one another, they're making themselves money and more power. I won't hate anyone just because I'm told to. I was that person. People spread rumors about me, and all was believed. Oh, Kim is a whore. Oh, Kim allows men to cheat with her. Oh, Kim spreads rumors. Oh, Kim is a liar. On and on it went. And not a single one of them came to me and said, "Did you do this? Is this true?" In fact, not. In fact, all those stories are far more exciting than I am. I remember my brother telling me that my mom called him and his best friend and made it seem I was at home crying and miserable and wanted him home because he'd gone on a trip with friends. I told him I had no idea she did that. I was probably with my best friend, just hanging out at that time, or in my room working or whatever. Not a single tiny thought to what he'd been doing, where he was, or anything at all. Yet people believed her. Lies are always easier to believe than truth. So I'm not going to engage in this silent battle to make us miserable. I'm going to step out of that highway of misery and try to re-engage the part of me that was a bit more poetic, a bit more romantic, happy-go-lucky. The feminine side, if you like, I know gratitude is big for me. It has been for a while. I don't do the big lists, the sit down and reflect type. That for me doesn't work. It's in the moment, at the time, in that space, as I think of it, that it works best for me. Not just the peace and comfort vibes I've been focused on and working on. Not just trying to figure out what is normal and healthy and embody that. Maybe others can handle it, but being snarky and anything but soft and gracious is exhausting to me. People can criticize and snark, but that is just a reflection of them. I'm gonna be even more conscious around what I surround myself with, who I follow, what I see, what I read, take in, keep around me. I want softness. I want comfort. I want to find that more flowery, poetic tone to my words. Not always, just a bit more. Because when I read that language, I feel like I'm coming home and removing the hard day, relaxing, and decompressing. It's what I want around me. I said not always because I'm multifaceted and am incapable of that one solid focus, as so many can do that I'm envious of. Maybe I am neurodivergent, as they say now to be all fancy or whatever. Maybe I'm just normal with a lot of diagnoses. Maybe I'm nothing but a human girl. Maybe I'm secretly a green goblin who likes to eat toes. My brain gives me odd descriptions at times. Either way, I definitely want to be better about that. Even better at accepting I am a multifaceted, multifocused, multitasking weirdo who it works for, and any others who can relate, and stop seeing that too as a negative around self. Unto the read. Oh, speaking of reads, if you want to commission me to read you one of my books, let me know and message me. I will do a private read in audio just for you on YouTube that you can listen to. So it means your read will not be the same as another's either. We can work out if it's a full at-once audio or chapter by chapter, since it could take a while to do a full read. I won't even guess at that, since I have never done it before. You decide the price. Minimum would be $50. We left off last week with the mutiny about to take place, and John and Alice discover that John's revolvers are missing. They get a note that straight out says not to get in the way, and they'll be fine. And we learned that I suck at reading pirate speech. There's more this week, so have fun. This is Chapter 2 of Tarzan of the Apes by Edgar Rice Burroughs, read by your host, Kimberly Sue Iverson. Chapter 2. The Savage Home. Nor did they have long to wait, for the next morning, as Clayton was emerging on deck for his accustomed walk before breakfast, a shot rang out, and then another, and another. The sight which met his eyes confirmed his worst fears. Facing the little knot of officers was the entire motley crew of the Fuwalda, and at their head stood Black Michael. At the first volley from the officers, the men ran for shelter, and from points of vantage behind masts, wheelhouse, and cabin, they returned the fire of the 5 men who represented the hated authority of the ship. 2 of their number had gone down before the captain's revolver. They lay where they had fallen between the combatants. But then the first mate lunged forward upon his face, and at a cry of command from Black Michael, the mutineers charged the remaining 4. The crew had been able to muster but 6 firearms, so most of them were armed with boathooks, axes, hatchets, and crowbars. The captain had emptied his revolver and was reloading as the charge was made. The second mate's gun had jammed, and so there were but 2 weapons opposed to the mutineers as they bore down upon the officers, who now started to give back before the infuriated rush of their men. Both sides were cursing and swearing in a frightful manner, which, together with the reports of the firearms and the screams and groans of the wounded, turned the deck of the Fuwalda to the likeness of a madhouse. Before the officers had taken a dozen backward steps, the men were upon them. An axe in the hands of a burly negro cleft the captain from forehead to chin, and an instant later the others were down, dead or wounded from dozens of blows and bullet wounds. Short and grisly had been the work of the mutineers of the Buwalda, and through it all John Clayton had stood leaning carelessly beside the companionway, puffing meditatively upon his pipe, as though he had been but watching an indifferent cricket match. As the last officer went down, he thought it was time that he returned to his wife, lest some members of the crew find her alone below. Though outwardly calm and indifferent, Clayton was inwardly apprehensive and wrought up, for he feared for his wife's safety at the hands of these ignorant half-brutes, into whose hands fate had so remorselessly thrown them. As he turned to descend the ladder, he was surprised to see his wife standing on the steps almost at his side. "How long have you been here, Alice?" "Since the beginning," she replied. "How awful, John! Oh, how awful! What can we hope for at the hands of such as those?" "Breakfast, I hope," he answered, smiling bravely in an attempt to allay her fears. "At least," he added, "I'm going to ask them. Come with me, Alice. We must not let them think we expect any but courteous treatment." The men had by this time surrounded the dead and wounded officers, and without either partiality or compassion, proceeded to throw both living and dead over the sides of the vessel. With equal heartlessness, they disposed of their own dead and dying. Presently, one of the crew spied the approaching Claytons, and with a cry of "Here's 2 more for the fishes," rushed toward them with uplifted axe. But Black Michael was even quicker, so that the fellow went down with a bullet in his back before he had taken a half-dozen steps. With a loud roar, Black Michael attracted the attention of the others, and, pointing to Lord and Lady Greystoke, cried, "These here are my friends, and they are to be left alone. Do you understand? I'm captain of this ship now, and what I say goes," he added, turning to Clayton. "Just keep to yourselves, and nobody'll harm ye." And he looked threateningly on his fellows. The Claytons heeded Black Michael's instructions so well that they saw but little of the crew and knew nothing of the plans the men were making. Occasionally they heard faint echoes of brawls and quarreling among the mutineers, and on 2 occasions the vicious bark of firearms rang out on the still air. But Black Michael was a fit leader for this band of cutthroats, and withal held them in fair subjection to his rule. On the 5th day following the murder of the ship's officers, land was sighted by the lookout. Whether island or mainland, Black Michael did not know, but he announced to Clayton that if investigation showed that the place was habitable, he and Lady Greystoke were to be put ashore with their belongings. "You'll be all right there for a few months," he explained, "and by that time we'll have been able to make an inhabited coast somewhere, and scatter a bit. Then I'll see that your government's notified, where you be, and they'll soon send a man-o'-war to fetch ye off. It would be a hard matter to land you in civilization without a lot of questions being asked, and none of us here has any very convincing answers up our sleeves." Clayton remonstrated against the inhumanity of landing them upon an unknown shore to be left to the mercies of savage beasts, and possibly still more savage men. But his words were of no avail. and only tended to anger Black Michael, so he was forced to desist and make the best he could of a bad situation. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they came about off a beautiful wooded shore opposite the mouth of what appeared to be a landlocked harbor. Black Michael sent a small boat filled with men to sound the entrance in an effort to determine if the Fuwalda could be safely worked through the entrance. In about an hour they returned and reported deep water through the passage as well as far into the little basin. Before dark, the barkentine lay peacefully at anchor upon the bosom of the still, mirror-like surface of the harbor. The surrounding shores were beautiful with semi-tropical verdure, while in the distance the country rose from the ocean in hill and tableland, almost uniformly clothed by primeval forest. No signs of habitation were visible, but that the land might easily support human life was evidenced by the abundant bird and animal life, of which the watchers on the Fuwalda's deck caught occasional glimpses, as well as by the shimmer of a little river which emptied into the harbor, ensuring fresh water in plenitude. As darkness settled upon the earth, Clayton and Lady Alice still stood by the ship's rail, in silent contemplation of their future abode. From the dark shadows of the mighty forest came the wild calls of savage beasts, the deep roar of the lion, and, occasionally, the shrill scream of a panther. The woman shrank closer to the man in terror-stricken anticipation of the horrors lying in wait for them in the awful blackness of the nights to come, when they should be alone upon that wild and lonely shore. Later in the evening, Black Michael joined them long enough to instruct them to make their preparations for landing on the morrow. They tried to persuade him to take them to some more hospitable coast, near enough to civilization, so that they might hope to fall into friendly hands. But no pleas or threats or promises of reward could move him. "I am the only man aboard who would not rather see ye both safely dead, and while I know that's the sensible way to make sure of our own necks, yet Black Michael's not the man to forget a favor. Ye saved my life once, and in return I'm going to spare yours, but that's all I can do. The men won't stand for any more, and if we don't get ye landed pretty quick, they may even change their minds about giving ye that much show. I'll put all your stuff ashore with ye, as well as cooking utensils, and some sails for tents, and enough grub to last ye until ye can find fruit and game. With your guns for protection, ye ought to be able to live here as easy enough until help comes. With your guns for protection, ye ought to be able to live here easy enough until help comes. When I get safely hid away, I'll see to it that the British government learns about where ye be. For the life of me I couldn't tell 'em exactly where, for I don't know myself, but they'll find ye all right." After he had left them, they went silently below, each wrapped in gloomy forebodings. Clayton did not believe that Black Michael had the slightest intention of notifying the British government of their whereabouts, nor was he any too sure but that some treachery was contemplated for the following day, when they should be on shore with the sailors who would have to accompany them with their belongings. Once out of Black Michael's sight, any of the men might strike them down and still leave Black Michael's conscience clear. And even should they escape that fate, was it not but to be faced with far graver dangers? Alone he might hope to survive for years, for he was a strong, athletic man. But what of Alice, and that other little life so soon to be launched amidst the hardships and grave dangers of a primeval world? The man shuddered as he meditated upon the awful gravity, the fearful helplessness of their situation, but it was a merciful providence which prevented him from foreseeing the hideous reality which awaited them in the grim depths of that gloomy wood. Early next morning their numerous chests and boxes were hoisted on deck and lowered to waiting small boats for transportation to shore. There was a great quantity and variety of stuff, as the Claytons had expected a possible 5 to 8 years' residence in their new home. Thus, in addition to the many necessities they had brought, there were also many luxuries. Black Michael was determined that nothing belonging to the Claytons should be left on board, whether out of compassion for them or in furtherance of his own self-interests, it would be difficult to say. There was no question but that the presence of property of a missing British official upon a suspicious vessel would have been a difficult thing to explain in any civilized port in the world. So zealous was he in his efforts to carry out his intentions that he insisted upon the return of Clayton's revolvers to him by the sailors in whose possession they were. Into the small boats were also loaded salt, meats, and biscuit, with a small supply of potatoes and beans, matches, and cooking vessels, a chest of tools, and the old sails which Black Michael had promised them. As though himself fearing the very thing which Clayton had suspected, Black Michael accompanied them to shore, and was the last to leave them when the small boats, having filled the ship's casks with fresh water, were pushed out toward the waiting Fuwalda. As the boats moved slowly over the smooth waters of the bay, Clayton and his wife stood silently watching their departure, in the breasts of both a feeling of impending disaster and utter hopelessness. And behind them, over the edge of a low ridge, other eyes watched, close-set, wicked eyes, gleaming beneath shaggy brows. As the Fuwalda passed through the narrow entrance to the harbor, and out of sight behind a projecting point, Lady Alice threw her arms about Clayton's neck and burst into uncontrolled sobs. Bravely had she faced the dangers of the mutiny. With heroic fortitude she had looked into the terrible future. But now that the horror of absolute solitude was upon them, her overwrought nerves gave way, and the reaction came. He did not attempt to check her tears. It were better that nature have her way in relieving these long-pent emotions, and it was many minutes before the girl, little more than a child she was, could again gain mastery of herself. "Oh, John," she cried at last, "the horror of it! What are we to do? What are we to do?" "There is but one thing to do, Alice," and he spoke as quietly as though they were sitting in their snug living room at home, "and that is work. Work must be our salvation. We must not give ourselves time to think, for in that direction lies madness. We must work and wait. I am sure that relief will come, and come quickly, when once it is apparent that the Fuwalda has been lost, even though Black Michael does not keep his word to us." "But John, if it were only you and I," she sobbed. "We could endure it, I know, but—" "Yes, dear," he answered gently. "I have been thinking of that also, but we must face it, as we must face whatever comes, bravely and with the utmost confidence in our ability to cope with circumstances, whatever they may be. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, our ancestors of the dim and distant past faced the same problems which we must face, possibly in these same primeval forests. That we are here today evidences their victory. What they did, may we not do? And even better, for are we not armed with ages of superior knowledge? And have we not the means of protection, defense, and sustenance, which science has given us, but of which they were totally ignorant? What they accomplished, Alice, with instruments and weapons of stone and bone, surely that may we accomplish also." "Ah, John, I wish that I might be a man with a man's philosophy, but I am but a woman, seeing with my heart rather than my head, and all that I can see is too horrible, too unthinkable to put into words. I only hope you are right, John. I will do my best to be a brave primeval woman, a fit mate for the primeval man." Clayton's first thought was to arrange a sleeping shelter for the night, something which might serve to protect them from prowling beasts of prey. He opened the box containing his rifles and ammunition, that they might both be armed against possible attack while at work, and then together they sought a location for their first night's sleeping place. 100 yards from the beach was a little level spot, fairly free of trees. Here they decided eventually to build a permanent house, but for the time being they both thought it best to construct a little platform in the trees, out of reach of the larger of the savage beasts in whose realm they were. To this end, Clayton selected 4 trees which formed a rectangle about 8 feet square, and cutting long branches from other trees, he constructed a framework around them, about 10 feet from the ground, fastening the ends of the branches securely to the trees by means of rope, a quantity of which Black Michael had furnished him from the hold of the Fuwalda. Across this framework Clayton placed other smaller branches quite close together. This platform he paved with the huge fronds of elephant's ear, which grew in profusion about them, and over the fronds he laid a great sail folded into several thicknesses. 7 feet higher he constructed a similar, though lighter platform, to serve as roof, and from the sides of this he suspended the balance of his sailcloth for walls. When completed, he had a rather snug little nest, to which he carried their blankets and some of the lighter luggage. It was now late in the afternoon, and the balance of the daylight hours were devoted to the building of a rude ladder, by means of which Lady Alice could mount to her new home. All during the day the forest about them had been filled with excited birds of brilliant plumage, and dancing, chattering monkeys, who watched these new arrivals and their wonderful nest-building operations with every mark of keenest interest and fascination. Notwithstanding that both Clayton and his wife kept a sharp lookout, they saw nothing of larger animals. Notwithstanding that both Clayton and his wife kept a sharp lookout, they saw nothing of larger animals, though on 2 occasions they had seen their little simian neighbors come screaming and chattering from the nearby ridge, casting frightened glances back over their little shoulders, and evincing as plainly as through by speech that they were fleeing some terrible thing which lay concealed there. Just before dusk, Clayton finished his ladder, and, filling a great basin with water from the nearby stream, the 2 mounted to the comparative safety of their aerial chamber. As it was quite warm, Clayton had left the side curtains thrown back over the roof, and as they sat like Turks upon their blankets, Lady Alice, straining her eyes into the darkening shadows of the wood, suddenly reached out and grasped Clayton's arms. "John," she whispered, "look! What is it, a man?" As Clayton turned his eyes in the direction she indicated, he saw silhouetted dimly against the shadows beyond a great figure standing upright upon the ridge. For a moment it stood as though listening, and then turned slowly and melted into the shadows of the jungle. "What is it, John?" "I do not know, Alice," he answered gravely. "It is too dark to see so far, and it may have been but a shadow cast by the rising moon." "No, John, if it was not a man, it was some huge and grotesque mockery of man. Oh, I am afraid." He gathered her in his arms, whispering words of courage and love into her ears. Soon after, he lowered the curtain walls, tying them securely to the trees so that, except for a little opening toward the beach, they were entirely enclosed. As it was now pitch dark within their tiny eyrie, they lay down upon their blankets to try to gain, through sleep, a brief respite of forgetfulness. Clayton lay facing the opening at the front, a rifle and a brace of revolvers at his hand. Scarcely had they closed their eyes than the terrifying cry of a panther rang out from the jungle behind them. Closer and closer it came, until they could hear the great beast directly beneath them. For an hour or more they heard it sniffing and clawing at the trees which supported their platform, but at last it roamed away across the beach, where Clayton could see it clearly in the brilliant moonlight, a great handsome beast, the largest he had ever seen. During the long hours of darkness they caught but fitful snatches of sleep, for the night noises of a great jungle teeming with myriad animal life kept their overwrought nerves on edge, so that 100 times they were startled to wakefulness by piercing screams or the stealthy moving of great bodies beneath them. End of Chapter 2 of Tarzan of the Apes, written by Edgar Rice Burroughs and read by Kimberly Sue Iverson. More to come. Would you like to make a difference? A gift of 5, 10, 15, or more would make a huge impact on my ability to keep this podcast going for you and upgrade my equipment. With your gift, we can grow this together because I want to make this the best I can for you. And frankly, you would help so much with far more than that. You'd be helping me change my life. Give today at ko-fi.com/Kimberly Sue Iverson. That's ko-fi.com/Kimberly Sue Iverson. Your presence here matters so much to me, so thank you for being here. I am beyond grateful you chose to spend this time with me. What are your thoughts? Share with me and start a conversation. Just don't be rude about it. Remember, kings and queens, everyone is fighting battles inside nobody can see. Who are you willing to see today? And who are you willing to let see you today? I hope someone can bring a smile to you today, or you can bring a smile to someone else. If you would like the chance for your story to be read, whether it's something you wrote, a story passed down in your family, or have a suggestion on a story to read, get in touch. Stories to read at KimberlySueIverson.com. That's stories to read at KimberlySueIverson.com. If you'd like to follow my socials, I would love to have you. Don't ever hesitate to comment and say hi either. Find me under at Kimberly Sue Iverson for most sites: Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Blue Sky, and TikTok. There's also a Facebook page for Redhead Rewriting Reality. X is the only site I use Kimber Bites on. I also have a newsletter for my work. That's bit.ly/letters from Kimberly. bit.ly/letters from Kimberly. I always try to use the same profile picture and name no matter where I am, but you can always find my links on my link cave. That's KimberlySueIverson.com/link cave. That's LINKCAVE. What follows are bloopers or mistakes that I made during the recording of this podcast. Fascinating. Oh, sure. Fascinating. Oh my god, I did it again.